Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it a few minutes for people to join the meeting. All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Stacy Adams, the lead project manager at South Florida Water Management District and the program managers for the Cooperative Funding Program, and I'll be the moderator and host for today's webinar. This is our second and final informational webinar we are hosting for the FY22 DEP Alternative Water Supply Program funding opportunity. The webinar is being recorded, and within a week of today's presentation, the webinar recording will be posted to the CFP website. We're continuing to work in a virtual environment, so during the presentation and question and answer session, you may hear background noises such as animals or children. Thank you for your understanding and patience in advance. Upon completion of the presentation, I will have further instructions on providing comments and or questions. During this presentation, there are two additional speakers, Rick Nebulas and Robert Wambestrout. With that, I'm going to get started. Well, Governor DeSantis signed an executive order in 2019 which requested recurring annual funds for alternative water supply development. The governor and the legislature recognized the importance of these projects and the protection of Florida's natural systems and allocated $40 million during both the 2019 and 2020 legislative sessions. For the fiscal year 20 and 21, the DEP project list submittals were fast-tracked, and applicants only had a few weeks to submit an application for funding consideration. So DEP worked with the Water Management District to develop an AWS guidance document last year, which allows for a longer schedule and in anticipation of AWS funding being appropriated. This timeline also lines up with other DEP funding opportunities and prior to the state's fiscal year start. Grant funding is provided through two different programs. The first is the DEP AWS program. It was established in 2019. The DEP AWS grant program was created where DEP reviews the prioritized list from all 5 water management districts and allocates any available funding. Applicants are eligible to receive up to 50% of eligible project costs, but no one is guaranteed 50%. The Water Protection and Sustainability Program was created in fiscal year 2006, and it's defined in Section 373-707. Per statute, the 3 large water management districts are required to match 100% of any state funds that we receive. Our district receives 30% of any allocated funding. Through this program, applicants are able to receive up to 40% of eligible project costs, but they are restricted to the construction costs for an alternative water supply project and hardware implementation costs of a water conservation project. This is our basic program information contact. You can email a unattended email, COOP funding, and that goes to multiple people so we can respond to any inquiries you might have. On our website, you're going to find the guidelines, the applications for AWS and water conservation, all of our program contacts, as well as example applications. If you have specific technical questions, you can reach out to Jim or Robert for conservation and Rick or myself for alternative water supply. So in anticipation of those AWS funds being appropriated by the legislature, the district released an application on December 1st. Today is the second of those Zoom informational webinars. The application does close on February 26th at 4 p.m. During March and April, staff will be reviewing all applications that have been received. And in May, I will be presenting the list back to the governing board for approval and submittal to DEP by May 31st. And then if we do receive any water protection sustainability funds, I will have to go back to the governing board for approval. We anticipate that would be August, September of this year. So who can apply? Pretty much any public or private entity, such as a local government, tribe, golf course, ag user, etc. To be eligible, you must adhere to all applicable laws and regulations, application instructions. If you are a specific user group that we do not cover, if you're an individual homeowner that wants to retrofit your personal irrigation system or your home plumbing, we don't fund those types of projects. It has to be an HOA or a condo. And if you are a permittee that is out of compliance with the district or DEP, you will not be considered for funding. This is a reimbursement program, so no one is guaranteed the full 40 or 50% of funding. Applicants are responsible to move forward with a project with or without district or state funding. Anticipated date for the district's fiscal year, which is October 1st, 2021, closing September 30th of 2022. These dates are subject to change based on legislative appropriations and agreements between DEP and the district. We've provided a start date to assist applicants to determine if a project application should be submitted or not. Allowable costs are towards the project identified in the application and construction or implementation costs within the funding period described. Some of our non-allowable costs are any expenses incurred before or after the funding period, pilot projects, permitting, design, regular O&M, if you're out of permit compliance again, and educational programs. As part of the DEP AWS guidance document, they requested the districts provide a prioritized list of projects based on some of the following considerations: that they provide regional benefits, it supports an MFL water body if applicable, additional benefits including water quality, flood control, etc., projects that are ready to go, and that a cost-benefit analysis has been undertaken. Historically, the program governing board priorities have considered that applicants must be within the district boundaries where the project provides benefits to our district, must be an AWS or water conservation project. Construction or implementation, again, means no O&M, design, engineering, permitting, or pilot projects. Projects should support the district's mission or an approved regional water supply plan. Our district has prioritized projects based on regional or resource considerations, such as a restricted allocation area. For over a decade, the district has been encouraging water conservation through our year-round irrigation rule. Some of you may be aware of this. The district has undertaken an initiative requesting local governments incorporate the requirements of the district's year-round irrigation rule into their local ordinances. During the November 2020 meeting, the district's governing board approved including this as part of our cost share process beginning in fiscal year 22, and in future years it will become an eligibility requirement for funding consideration. This will only apply to local governments and not private entities. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Nebulas to discuss the alternative water supply project type and considerations. Rick is our water reuse coordinator. He's been a project manager with our alternative water supply funding program for more than a decade. Give me just a second to hand you the controls, Rick. And
all right, Stacy, I think I got it. Let me back up one here. All righty. Thank you, Stacy. As Stacy mentioned, this grant program includes both alternative water supply projects and water conservation projects. I'd like to take just a few minutes to focus in on the alternative water supply, or the AWS side of the program. First, let's talk about what's included as an AWS project in this grant program. Simply put, AWS projects are those that increase water supplies through the development of non-traditional water sources, which can also include storage of those AWS sources. Non-traditional sources include things like brackish water, salt water, reclaimed water, excess surface or stormwater, or any other source designated as non-traditional in a regional water supply plan. It should be noted, however, that operation and maintenance projects, even if they are for development of a non-traditional source, are not included in this program. Previously, Stacy mentioned some considerations for the program from the DEP guidance document. The district's review will also consider additional guidelines for AWS projects. These include things like, does the project support the goal and objective of our regional water supply plans? Does it reduce dependence on traditional sources? Does the project support ocean outfall legislation for those projects along our lower East Coast? And will the project's contribution be in a resource limited area? These considerations, along with the ones that DEP had outlined, provide the guidance for potential project funding. Now, as previously stated, this grant program is for the construction of AWS projects, but obviously not all water supply construction projects are considered AWS. Allowable AWS project costs include things like transmission lines for brackish or saltwater sources, reclaimed water pipelines and the pump stations or storage that goes along with them, RO trains and the pumps and equipment that go along with RO, ASR wells, assuming of course that the source of water is non-traditional, brackish water production wells, and concentrate disposal wells, again, if the well is associated with an AWS source. However, as you might expect, not all AWS construction costs are allowable under the program. Non-allowable AWS costs include things, as Stacy mentioned, like design, permitting, videos, or as-builts of the construction. Construction of finished water projects, such as storage tanks or transmission lines, are also not included. End user connections and backup generators are also examples of non-allowable costs. More examples of non-allowable costs, if you're interested, are provided in the guidelines on our website. So basically, the AWS funding costs and considerations come down to the point made on my first slide, which is this AWS program is for the construction of projects that increase water supply by developing non-traditional sources of water. And with that, now I'll turn it over to Robert Wanvestraat. He's our Senior Water Conservation Analyst and Technical Advisor to discuss the water conservation side of the program. Robert will review some highlights of this project type and can be reached directly should you have questions regarding any technical aspects of water conservation. Robert, take it away.
All right, thank you, Rick. So as Rick said, I'm going to review the water conservation component of the cooperative funding program. Here we go. Oops, let me go back one, I'm sorry. Okay, so these are water conservation projects are those that can be implemented either by and on an individual property or a business or farm, nursery directly, or they can take the form of a rebate program by some sort of, and being managed by some sponsoring entity such as a utility or a local government and so on. What you're seeing here on this slide, these are the review considerations for each of the project applications. And you'll see that it's not only the size or scale of the project that matters, it's this entire suite of considerations that allows the district to accept a greater diversity of possible projects. And just one of these I'd like to highlight for a moment. One that's highly considered is the cost in dollars per 1,000 gallons of water saved. Focusing on this particular metric allows the district to stretch its dollars to get the most bang for each buck, but it also helps drive the applicants to design their projects to be as cost effective as possible. So we're going to take a look at the two broadest categories of project types under the water conservation component of the CFP program. And the first are those projects that are implemented in urban settings. Now, these types of projects often target fixtures and appliances in either residential or commercial settings, and they can also focus on water use efficiency improvements in irrigation systems. These primary targets are properties and structures that are already existing, because this is a retrofit type of program. However, there is one exception, and that is this project can apply funding to a new construction project if the builder or property manager is achieving certification under the Florida Water Star program, which is very similar to LEED, but focuses specifically on water use efficiency. There's the website here is at the bottom of the screen, floridawaterstar.com, and I advise you, if you have a project that you think may be taking place in a new construction scenario, take a look at that website and see if that program is proper for you. So in addition to those common program types, the indoor fixtures and appliances and outdoor irrigation systems, owners and managers of sponsoring entities can also look at cooling tower water use efficiency programs or industrial machinery, things like that. We're basically leaving the door open for any type of user to present any type of hardware or technology that may improve water use efficiency. So if you don't see your project type that you have in mind listed anywhere in our guidelines or in the history of our previous programs, it may be eligible. We're open to reviewing all project types. Just as in the AWS program, there are several non-allowable project types. And the first, again, would be anything that's occurring in a new construction scenario, unless it's part of the Florida Water Star certification program. And the second non-allowable project type would be those that target practices that are normal operations and maintenance related. So it's probably best if you focus on improving water use efficiency rather than those that would address routine operations and normal repairs. All right, so now we're moving into the second broad category of project, and those would be those that would take place in an agriculture or nursery operation. And underneath this general type, we've identified two project types. The first would be those that convert an existing irrigation system to a more efficient one. So think of flood to overhead. And the second project type under this broad category, agriculture, nursery, is those that help improve management of the irrigation system. So in this case, think more like soil moisture sensors or weather sensing equipment and so on. But again, just as I mentioned in the urban project types, project category, please, we welcome you to think broader and think of, approach us with any other types of water use efficiency project, and we'll take a look at that and we'll review, and hopefully we can find some new areas and new ways that we can improve water use efficiency in this type of setting. Now, there are some project types that are not allowable under the agriculture nursery project type, and those would be to include brand new irrigation systems or extensions of irrigation systems into an unirrigated area. Those are not allowed. And neither will be projects that create new water sources. So for that, think of tailwater ponds or reservoirs. Those are not allowed either. Those are considered alternative water supplies or water sources. And just as in the urban projects, please think, keep an eye on the types of practices that look at normal operations and maintenance versus those that are improving water use efficiency. We are not able to fund normal operations and maintenance programs. We are specifically focused on those just improving water use efficiency. So that covers the basics for the water conservation component of this CFP program. But applicants are strongly encouraged to review the program guidelines to be sure that their project meets any and all of the applicable standards and requirements. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Stacy Adams so she can review the program website.
Thanks, Rick and Robert. Appreciate it. This is our main landing page for, if you haven't already been on our website, for the CFP program. So when you first land on it, you're going to see our schedule. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll find links to the guidelines, the application. There is a separate Excel application for ag and versus a separate application for urban. So if you're applying for water conservation, just make sure you're downloading the correct application. And then 3 examples for each project type. If you haven't already subscribed to our email notification list for future funding opportunities, on the screen, there's a little click here to subscribe. I encourage you guys to go there, click on it, and then you'll be on our email notification list. All of our contact information is at the bottom. So if you have any questions regarding if your project is eligible or if you're having technical issues, please call one of us. If you've already completed your application, you don't have any questions, you're ready to submit, you're going to, right above the guidelines, there's a click here for the online submittal form. You're going to click there, and it's going to take you to, should open another tab for the online submission form. All these fields are required. We do require the project latitude and longitude to be provided. If for some reason you don't have this information, IT has created a little click here button for you to enter your address, and they'll find it, and then it'll populate those 2 fields for you. You do have to click one of the little buttons, and it's either an AWS project or it's the water conservation. And then you will be required to upload at least 1 file, being the application. You can also upload PDFs of quotes if you would like, or if you have other figures, those kind of things can also be uploaded, but there is a maximum of 5 individual files that can be sent. You must submit your application and documentation through the online submission format. We will not be accepting these through email. Once you're ready, you're going to click the I'm not a robot for the captcha to come up, and then you're going to submit your request. Once you submit your request, an email will be generated that shows that you have submitted your application, and then the district staff will also be notified that an application has been uploaded. So this time I'm going to go over a couple housekeeping items. So if you're participating via Zoom and you'd like to ask a question or provide a comment, you can use the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you're participating via phone, you can do *9, which will raise or lower your hand, and *6 will mute and unmute your line. So when you're called upon, please state your full name and affiliation prior to providing any comments or questions. I don't see any raised hands this time. Oh, Marta, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me well, Stacy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. So I do have a question for water conservation grant. And I noticed the software, it's eligible, but how I calculate water efficiency, if I'm not sure how many customers are gonna be actually signing into the software and monitoring their own water usage in the house. So that's what I'm struggling with, to provide the water efficiency data for water conservation, if that's really based on the individual usages.
Robert, would you please answer the question?
can you just repeat the question part of that? I heard the setup of that. Well, what's your actual question?
Okay, so let me just put the headphones. Oh, okay, I've just put the headphones. So the question is how I calculate water efficiency for water conservation grant for online software.
Okay. There's no easy answer to that question. Part of that would be dependent on how extensive that your campaign would be in order to encourage people to sign up for that service. That's part of it. And then, of course, relative to your full targets, your full population. You may be able to look in the conservation literature to see how much participation and how much savings that other users of this type have seen when they implement this type of measure. That's probably the best way to go about that. And I'm sure that whoever your vendor is going to be may be able to guide you in that direction. I wouldn't just go by what the vendor suggests. However, I would look a little bit deeper at more broadly where this type of measure has been implemented and what write-ups have been done in this related to this measure.
I do understand, but even considering if 100% of the population will participate and they would sign in a software, that still doesn't mean they would meet the conservation measures, because that's an in-house, I don't know, the decision, I guess. So I kind of struggling with how, I mean, I do have some data from our online software provider, but again, even if everybody participates, doesn't mean they would really, conserve that amount of water.
Yes, I understand the challenges associated with this. The best advice I could give you, again, is to track down where this type of program has been implemented in the past and see what types of results in terms of water saving in those places.
Okay, good. I do have Associated City that they implemented, so I may ask for that data from them. That's a good idea. And just, based on, neighboring city. Okay, and I do have a second question. Thank you, Robert. But that's going to be a general question, I guess, for alternative water supply. I understand the design phase needs to be completed. And what do we mean by completion? Is that has to be signed and sealed drawings already, kind of sitting on a shelf, or kind of pending design as I apply for this grant? Because looks like the time frame for the award may be, starting fiscal year of 21. And I do have some design pending right now. So I'm just wondering if that's something that would be eligible.
Okay, so typically we would like to see that the project has been designed, or at least it's well on its way in the design process, so you would be able to start construction. So if your construction timeline, because I'm not sure which AWS project you're looking at, but if the construction time frame is, only 6 to 9 months, then it doesn't matter if your design is not done and it's going to be done in the first quarter. But right now, with the 1 year, we've changed this. It might be a year, might be 18 months that the project would need to be completed in. If you don't think you can meet that based on where you are with your design, you may not want to apply.
Okay.
But we don't rule you out because your project is in design, because a lot of our reclaimed water projects that we have funded in the past, they were doing final design, they were awarded, and the projects were completed within the time frame in the contracts.
Okay. Thank you, Stacy.
We just don't want you to apply for a project that you can't get designed, and then you get awarded the project and you've only got 3 months in a contract to try and finish that project. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay, so if we, in the first stage of the design, I mean, obviously we know what we want, it looks like the time frame it's extended to 12, 18 months, so we should be fine.
Okay,
All right, thank you, Stacy.
you're welcome.
I have no more questions. There was Marta from Town of 80.
Thank you very much, Marta.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has any other questions at this time? Randy Brown.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to make a couple comments. One, I always appreciate working with Stacy, Rick, and Robert on their projects. They handle them very well and are excellent to work with. And I also wanted to give kudos to Rick because I hear he's retiring in February. So we appreciate all the work he's done with us here at the utility and with water reuse.
Well, thank you, Randy.
Thank you for those kind words. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Andrew Beckwith.
Yeah, hi. Are we able to receive a PDF copy of the slides from the presentation?
I will be PDFing them and posting them on the CSP website.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, so that did not go the way it was supposed to. Thanks everyone for joining us today and our speakers. As a reminder, this will be posted on the CFP website along with the presentation. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for attending.